Hi everyone, nice to see you. Happy New Year. Today I want to show you your two new best friends, the element inspector and the console. How you can see them? You just right click on the browser and click on inspect. There we can see our element inspector. We can see all the elements in here. And the console is just right next to it. Here is the console. So why do we need them? Well, this is what we've written, and this is the result. But by the way, why is there a space before this text here? I know that this is the block quote, but by the way, if to check what this is, I can just right click and inspect, and it tells me that this is the block quote. And what I see here is that it has spaces around it. Okay, so it has margins by default, and these are the properties that it inherits by default as a block quote, and so does the paragraphs. So they have margins by default. And by the way, the margins of the paragraphs and the block quote, can you see that they overlap? This is called margin collapsing. The margins of a relative element collapse. Now you know one thing. Just think about it. Link in the description. And there's also one problem here. I have this style, and this style says that my block quote should be yellow, but it isn't. Why is that? Well, if I check the console, I can see that there's a problem here related to the styles.css. Well, what's the problem? Here I can see that it's the styles.css, yes. And here in my style, oh, okay, so the file name is not styles.css, it's style.css. So if I remove the S and save, now it's applied. So both the element inspector and the console here helped us greatly. And now if we right click on the block quote and inspect, we can see that the block quote has this style applied to it from style.css and which line of style.css it is. And this is really essential because you'll need that. Sometimes you have many different styles applied to one element, and you need to know which one is it that you may need to remove or edit. So now that we've seen that, let's talk about the box model, and let's look at the representation that I created for you. Okay, so this is the representation of the box model that I've created. And here you can see that inside the body we have the main element, a div, and then a div, another div. So this div will act as our content, and this will be our element. So this div with the class box, we will add the paddings, the border, and the margin on just this div. And what's happening here is that we've given a background color to the content. We can right click here and we can see that this content has some background color, and that's why it's colored. And so the padding will have the background color of the box that we can see here. And the border has the properties that we've set in our styles that we will look at later. But here we can see a wonderful representation of our box. We can see that this is the margin, and this is the border, and this is the padding, and this is the content. Awesome, right? So a better way to illustrate this, I found out a 3D model. Let me show you. Okay, so here it is, and this is just like what we've written in HTML, because this is the content, and the content is stacked above the parent. And we've added all the properties, the paddings and the margins to our element, and this is our element here. and this is its border, and the border is considered part of the element. By adding or creating a padding inside the element, by the way, the padding pushes things inside the element while the margin pushes things away. So by adding a padding to our element, the content then shrinks inside the element. It can shrink, but it can also have different behavior. We can talk about that in other projects. We did push the content away from the element here, and the content, so this part now is the padding, and by adding the margin, then our element pushes away what's outside the element. Okay, awesome. I hope that did help you. So let's talk about how did we center this element. Centering an element is very, very important. To center an element horizontally and vertically, you need to have the parent have the whole width and height of where you want it to be centered. And here in our case, we want the element to be centered on the whole browser. So the viewport height and the viewport width. So our container should have 100% of these two measurements. To do that, we've added this part here, this style. We say that we want the body to have a margin of 0. By the way, if I comment this and save, the body of an HTML document by default has 8 pixels of margin. And by adding margin 0, there is no margin anymore from the body. And it is by default display block. What do I mean by that? Display block, it will get the width of the whole page or the whole parent that is in. And then I gave it the height of 100 viewport height. So now the height of the body will be this, from here to here. So if I want to center something inside it, I can center it based on the width and the height of the body. So that's what we did here. So first way to center an element is by using display grid, and then use place items, center, center. Well, we can use grid mostly to put things as grids. Here we have one element, and we can place that element at the center. So another way to center our element is by using display flex. And with display flex, if I save this, you can see that nothing happens because the two properties got the same effects. So here I added display flex with justify content center and align item center. These two are for vertical and horizontal alignment. That's how it centers the element. So what do we have here? Well, if we go to the top also, you can see that I've added some variables to the root of the element. We can add variables to different elements, but here we use the root so that we can use these variables everywhere in our page. So this is how we set variables. We create the name of the variable and the value, and then we can use it like this. Okay? Good. So we've created 4 variables, and now we can easily change the values from here, and then they will update here. So this is the box that we've talked about. This is the element. If we right click here and inspect, it will give us our element. Here it is. And what we can see here is another measurement. We see width is 40 viewport min. What viewport min is the minimum of the size of the viewport. There is the viewport width and the viewport height. So whatever size is lower, that's the viewport min. And 40 v min is the mean is 40% of the minimum viewport. So whichever of the height and the width is lower, then my viewport mean will be lower than that. So if I resize the height of the browser, we can see that our element shrinks with it. And if I increase it at a certain point, it's not anymore the viewport mean, because here is now the viewport mean is the width, and then I can decrease the width and our element shrinks with it. So what else do we have here? I have defined the border of 20 pixels solid with this color, and I have added a padding of 50 pixels and a margin of 7 minimum viewport. Good. So how did we get these here? As I already talked about it, the content has the background color of this kind of yellow. Here is our content, and it has the width and height of 100%. That means that it will have 100% of whatever height and width its container gives it. So here we gave our main element background color of this margin color, which is this. And the reason why this has this color, even though we say that it should be the margin of the content, is that it is below the element. And hi bird, it is below the element, and the element's margin doesn't get the background color of the element, but it instead gets the background color of the parent. And as we saw earlier already, this is the background color of the parent, and we put the element above it, and then the margin pushes the parent away, which make the margin of this element get colored by the parent's background color. So that's all for today. I've put a link in the description for this pen, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next video.